this works. Close out of some random
Oh,
stuff.
we don't get your webcam though.
Oh, that's true. Darn. Okay. So,
Hey,
I
no
think
swearing.
okay, so I had this written up a while ago actually. Um and I was kind of going to walk through it relatively briefly, then jump over to the Agile Alliance site, which is where you can really just get all the information that you want and not have to listen to me talk. And then I was going to finish off by going through what like a user story is and kind of a more concrete example using our hackathon project as an example for a um, just kind of like an agile development life cycle. So, what is agile? Well, agile software development is an umbrella of terms instead of frameworks and practices. Blah blah blah. It's basically just a process of developing anything. It's not just software, but it's used a lot with developing software, and it can quickly respond to change. Hence the name Agile, which is, this is groundbreaking stuff right
You're
here.
blowing my mind right
So,
now.
yeah, I know. Okay. So the key things, I think we can dive through a couple of these. Um, the 12 principles of agile software development. I think each of these they kind of sum up relatively succinctly in one sentence, little blurbs. So the first one, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So basically, the big thing here that you can look at is it's they're delivering continuously to the customer, which means you have to be continuously doing incremental development, which I think it mentions in here. But that's where you're doing just small changes, but it's still a working piece of software after every change. Um, so
Unlike my code.
yeah, you're iterating through and giving the customer quick and valuable updates. Um, you welcome changing requirements, mainly because you try and set up your workflow to be quick so that when there is a change, you either have already made the change and you're just making a new change, or it's um, you haven't even gotten to it yet because you're just working so quickly. It's either done or it's not. You try and make it in a quick fashion so that when requirements change, it's easy to just go in and change it and not much else has to be done. And that kind of goes into since you're doing, continuous delivery, the quicker you get things into the hands of customers, the quicker they're going to want changes. So, continuing with that, you're delivering software frequently. That's a lot of times why you hear like things like microservices are really useful, and you got to move away from the monolith.
Mm-hmm.
The monolith is one giant piece of software that you update every year, and it takes an hour to download. And you have to send representatives out because nobody can figure out how to install your software. That's the monolith.
The microservices approach is what my company tried to do before the recession hit.
Yeah. So microservices, if you know how to do them and you already do them and you have a workflow set up to work with that, then it can be good. And a lot of times that's how an agile software can work, because if we're making small continuous updates, it makes sense to have that on small continuous pieces of software that's always being updated. Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. So this is one thing that I think is one of the big differences, is that there's always kind of this communication between developers and the people that want the software. And what that means is you don't have the situation where the business people say, "We want, a house," and so the developer goes out and builds the whole house in the suburbs, and then you come back and say, "We built you a house," and the business people really wanted a log cabin. Um, so it's that because they're always in communication, you can stop at any point and realize, oh, the developers are going in the wrong direction, or the business people have no idea what they want. Now, usually it's the business people have no idea what they want, but that doesn't mean sometimes
That's always the
developers.
case.
What?
Hey, sometimes the business people know what they're doing. It's just very uncommon.
Yeah, I know. That's yeah. Next, build projects around motivated individuals. So this will kind of tie into the user stories, which we'll see in a bit. But essentially, it's all the changes you make are devoted to some specific person actually wanting them. So I think this will make more sense when you kind of look at user stories.
That's kind of cool. Because if part
yeah,
of a project's kind of boring and you don't know that much about it, or it's just not, you're just not interested, then it makes it a little bit.
Yeah.
It makes a lot. That makes.
Yeah, you're not just making software to make software. You're making software because somebody has a specific reason to use that software. The most efficient and effective method for conveying information to and within the development team is face-to-face conversation. This one, it kind of, I think I think there's obvious reasons it makes sense. And then when you actually do it in practice, you realize how much sense it really can make. For me, we'll kind of get into like stand-up meetings and stuff. But having a face-to-face meeting every day with people meant that I could always talk about the stuff that I'm doing and what's hanging me up. And then somebody could immediately be like, oh, I know exactly how to fix that. So then every roadblock can only last a day, because by the time you have your next meeting, you can talk to somebody and figure it out, which is really nice. It does sound painful to have meetings every day, but it's not as bad as you'd think, depending on who you have a meeting with.
Yeah, on my co-op, it's very important to get into the meat of the project.
I did that on my co-op. We had meetings every day, at the beginning of the day, to talk about what we were going to do, what we were doing, what problems we had, and I think it worked pretty well. So, yeah.
Nice. I can only hope for that. That was the one thing I wanted when I was on co-op.
Yeah, it can be hard without them, but then you always hear like, oh, we're going to have a meeting every day, and that has its own like
tedium,
stigma and time investment in it, which you have to balance. Working software is the primary measure of progress. This one is where I start to have a little, there's some things where I personally diverge a little from the Agile process. This is one of them, because if the primary measure of progress is working software, we all know you can write working software that's absolute trash.
I see what you mean.
And so I personally don't like this, but this is one of the 12 key things of Agile.
It should just be lines of code that you write. Working or not.
Well, yeah. No.
When you do that, you'll notice there are people who are paid by the line, and you'll see so much more white space.
No.
What do you mean paid by the line?
Yeah, paid by the line of code.
But
yeah,
right?
No, dude, I'm gonna be rich. No way. Josh, you're gonna be a billionaire.
I mean, the way I format my code, I would also probably be rich.
Yeah, throw almond out the window. Or wait.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Whichever one. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay. So this is personally, I think you should always keep in mind about your documentation within the code and outside of the code. But as far as Agile is concerned, this is definitely kind of a business perspective, and that the only thing that's really worth money to the business at the current time is the working piece of software. Later on in time, the documentation will become important when you have to fix things, but because Agile is about the fast moving, the here and now, it cares about the working software as the primary measure of progress. Next point, Agile process promotes sustainable development, and the sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. This is another big thing, looking at how do you make sure that you're having your work pace isn't too slow, it isn't too fast that you burn people out. It's at the rate where everybody is happy, and you would think that's a hard thing to figure out, but Agile has a lot of ideas and processes under it that actually really help out with that. And that'll make more sense when we look at an example as well with the sprint. Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. So this, again, this kind of goes back to where I was talking about how making sure you write things well and having good documentation and well planned out software is important, because if we're quickly developing things, if it's not well planned out and things change and it starts to break a lot of stuff, you need to be able to account for that quickly. Because again, we're moving at that constant pace indefinitely. And so if you don't have a good design to back that up, you're going to end up with a roadblock that's going to be hard to get past. Simplicity is essential. Maximizing the amount of work not done. So it's kind of looking at when every problem we face has a million different solutions in the code, and 999,998 of them are absolute trash, but there's probably 2 of them that are pretty good. And so usually in Agile, you're going to take the simpler of the 2, which is good, because if you're doing fast incremental development, you kind of don't want to take the time to make the complex one, and you don't want to have to go back later on and try and debug the complex one when you make changes. So simplicity is important. The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. So it's better for teams to figure out their own organization. They're able to create better designs. This one I wasn't totally sure what all that means. I think a lot of this just kind of goes to it's a lot about the team level.
Well, the part of the self-organizing, I know that there's, during some Agile, they'll have the team get together and decide on rules that they want to abide by. So we actually are Agile at Hillrom, and we got together and we went, okay, so here's the standards that were used on the previous project that we're essentially inheriting. What standards do we want to use? And we decided that. We had to get it approved, but we worked as a team, we work together, we work as a unit, and we get to decide a lot of how we work.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Okay. So yeah, the team kind of decides how they best work, kind of idea, definitely. And then this goes into kind of sprints, and will probably actually lead pretty well into our example. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective and tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. And this, I think, is where you can really get into a good flow in terms of your workflow. Because if you're regularly going back and seeing, okay, this was absolute trash, but this worked pretty well, maybe we could try and balance. We can figure out how to minimize the stuff that didn't work well and do more of the stuff that worked well, and we can get more done overall. And it's kind of a team by team basis, which makes it really nice, because then it's not just It's not some big idea that applies to everyone. It's your team figures out what works for you guys specifically, which is, since it's a tailored solution for your group, it's going to work a lot better than if you just had these big concepts that and then just kind of molded them and made yourselves fit the concept instead of letting the concepts fit your group specifically. So those were the 12 points. Any other questions, comments, concerns, comments?
I like it so far.
These aren't hard rules. As I said, we use Agile, but we're in medical, and medical runs a lot slower. So our 2-week sprints are like, let's see how much you can get done in 2 weeks, but you're not going to do your sprint. So it's very common to have multiple sprints over the same thing, just because of documentation and testing and all the steps just to do something.
Oh yeah, how does documentation fall into all of this? Is it just like what the team decides?
For me or Agile?
Agile, but I guess I'm also curious how you guys do it.
Agile, as in the Agile manifesto, it says, I think working code over proper documentation or something.
Working software is the primary measure of progress.
I can see. I can feel the hair falling out of Joey's head. The stress.
What hair?
The hair that's man. There's not much, and it's going pretty fast with this.
The hair, as in singular.
Yes. Yes. What we do is insane. We have an SDS and SRS so SRS is system requirement specification, SDS is system design specification. Then we have the software DFMEA, which is some like stuff for the European Union. And then we've got, I think, 5 other documents, but I'm forgetting their name. And all of those have to be completed before you can release the product.
Well, yeah, that probably also, because you're in the medical field, you probably have to pass those along to various companies or government facilities.
You're medical, so you're probably going to have to document pretty well.
Oh, that sounds painful. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I love it. We do everything the right way. We do it right the first time. It is actually like really cool how much people care about quality and making sure things are done right.
Okay, that's really good to hear.
Yeah. But yes, it takes a long time.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I was going to move to, so on the Agile Alliance site, there's a lot on it. If you get a chance and you want to learn more, there's a lot to look through. We went through the 12 principles. I think it's kind of, it'll probably make more sense when you see how it works or how it can work in practice. Additionally, the Agile manifesto was kind of, I can't remember what software people got together, and they wrote this together for how they wanted to make software the best way. And you can read it, and I think you can sign it somewhere. You can read the history of Agile all the way back to 2001. So you can look at that. There's also a glossary with all the other ridiculous terms that they'll come up with. But I was going to look at the subway map and kind of cover a couple of the keywords that I think would be important for us, that I think we could try and do with this project. So I think it would be a good idea to have a scrum, and then because we have the deadline is March 10th, we could try and have a 1 week.
April 10th?
March. Yes, April.
I'm just making sure I'm not going crazy here.
Yeah. I believe the ending is April 10th. It might be the Sunday afterwards. But we could, if we wanted to do a 1 week sprints and have a sprint review. You have 2 of them, so that would be pretty interesting to actually have a chance to update our workflow in the middle and see what that's like. Or we could do 1 2-week sprint and just kind of follow up with a sprint review at the end of what worked well. But essentially what that comes down to is there's a lot of keywords that kind of go into it. And we can start off by, what is a sprint? And that's basically, it's where the group decides how much work and what specific work they want to try and get done in a certain period of time. And so when you've defined that amount of work, then you go through and you see how well can we, or in that sprint, you see how much of that you do. And there's ways to define how much work you do. And then at the end, you look back at the sprint and you have a sprint review where you review what went well during the sprint, what didn't work, what held you up, and what things you could do differently. And then you plan for the next sprint with keeping in mind the changes that you wanted to make from the last one. And since you're doing it every 2 weeks, some do it 1 week, some do it every 3 weeks or so. But because you're doing it every so often, you're keeping track of what work you should be doing. You're keeping track of how much work is getting done. And there's a lot of just consistency within the entire workflow to make sure things are getting updated as needed. So I'm going to follow the most of the Scrum, what did they call this? A subway map. Although no, I don't have my head on the screen, so I'm not covering it. The key things, I guess also it leads into some other stuff. So you have your backlog. Your backlog is essentially your list of items that you want to get done overall, not necessarily just for the sprint, but for your entire project. And that's always kind of growing as more and more requests come in. And that kind of leads into backlog grooming, where you should, if certain items are on your backlog, the product owner can review them and ensure that all items on the backlog should be there. So if some random customer made a suggestion 3 years ago and you put it on the backlog 3 years ago, and now it's been 3 years, you're like, they are not even a customer anymore, and no one else has asked for that, and we kind of implemented something similar but different. You do backlog grooming. Likely we won't need to do that because it's only 2 weeks. So we have our backlog, and what we do there, a lot of these are related to the point estimates, the relative estimation, and planning poker are all related to how do we define how much work something is going to take. And basically what you do is, so we have our tasks here. And notice the way the task is written. So I gave them a title, and I use they're called user stories. And basically the format is as a whatever user. So sometimes it's more specific, but for our case, I just left it as user. I want, and then you list the thing you want. So whatever the kind of feature is. And then you say, so that, and then you have the reasoning or what you want to do with that piece of software. So not only does this tell you what they want, this will also tell you what they need, which are usually two separate. Well, they're usually two very similar things, but they're not always the same. So that's one actually really nice thing about writing them out as a user story. It gives you the reasoning as to why they want something, which is useful.
The why helps you figure out what you need to do, even when they don't necessarily know how to articulate it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So from this, I wrote a bunch of them. I think I just took the ideas and then formatted them in a different way. Let let me grab the link for this. Create link, copy, and drop it in the ACM. So you can join this if you want. You can also add cards if you want.
Context is the ultimate disambiguator.
Yes. Yes. But from here, I also attached cards if they were connected. What you do is you notice on this one it says it's not estimated. And the point here is we estimate it with what are called story points. And so the point system goes, you can give something where a low number is very minimal work and a higher number is more and more work. But you can only assign them numbers that are in the Fibonacci sequence.
Wait, what?
Yeah. It sounds weird the first
Wow.
time you hear it, but it makes a lot more sense when you see it. So you can only assign something 1 point, 2 point, 3 point,
5
5
point, 8 point,
8
13
I
point,
love Fibonacci
31,
sequence.
etc.
That's
21. But the thing is, that means you can't assign something like 10 points. You're either assigning it 8 points or you're assigning it 13. And it really helps you decide between what are the smaller tests and what are the bigger.
That's pretty cool.
And a lot of the times, if we were in person, there's a couple different things you could do. One of the things that I think works really well is you just put them up on a wall and you scale it where one side of the wall is 1 point and the other side is probably 21 points, or if you have something really big, 34 points or whatever the next number is. And you just put the sticky notes with the title of the user story, and you'd put them up on the wall and define, oh, okay, well, there's kind of this group of easy tasks over here. We're going to define them as 1. Then the next ones are 2s and 3s and 5s and so on. And that kind of goes into the relative estimation idea, where your work is defined, comparatively. It's not like a 1 really means anything. It's not like it means, it's 10 minutes work exactly.
It means it's probably a feature.
It means it's something super small. Like I think when we did things like a 1 was like change colors on some of the styling and change a couple of the fonts. Like that was a 1. And then like a 13 was like add a table that connects to a database. So that's just kind of like a rough idea. It was kind of, a lot of it was, but it's a lot of guessing because obviously you don't know exactly how much work something's going to. And sometimes you might find out those hard ones you thought were really easy, which is why this one's nice. It has the estimation and the number of spent ones. Gonna keep track of that. So from there, what you do is we'd set up our sprint, which I think I actually have to do with this. A new sprint. Name your sprint. Sprint 1. So this is kind of where the number of story points comes into play. When you plan for your sprint, we figure out how many points we want to try and work on as a group. So we figure out how much work we want to get done, because you're never going to be able to get done with everything in the backlog in one sprint. You gotta pick and choose what you're going to do. And limit. That's the done list. So then you can automatically move things when you put them in the sprint, and then you can move them to the done pile when they're done, or you can grab them as you go. But that kind of goes into this idea of you have these lists where then you'd move it into your sprint list, and then you'd move it into then you'd probably have an in progress. Then you'd usually have in testing. I don't know how much testing we're going to have time to do, so I'm just going to say the done pile. And then you'd move stuff into your sprint. You'd move work as you grab it off your sprint list. Hopefully you'd grab all of it by the end of the sprint. And you move it into the in progress, and then you move it into a done pile when you're done with them. So you can always see what work you guys need to get done in the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, what work people are currently doing, and what's already done from this last. And so you'd hope that your planning it gets better over time, and you try and plan how much work something's going to take. You take the appropriate amount of work that doesn't overwork you, but it's not the amount where you're just kind of sitting doing nothing for the last half of your sprint. It's you try and find that right amount of work so everybody feels like you're accomplishing everything you should, and that's a good feeling. So that's kind of the idea of this sprint. Is what we'll do is we'll give these points, and the other thing you can give them is a priority. And from that, what you can do is you can start to look at your backlog when you're planning for your sprint and say, okay, well, we want to try and get done with 24, 30 points of work, story points. And so you can kind of break that up to grab, well, maybe we want a couple of these bigger high priority things. And then to kind of fill it out, then add a couple of the lower priority, smaller items, the like low hanging fruit to grab to kind of balance it all out so that at the end you have a solid size sprint of work to do. And it's not
smothering.
It's not going to be too strenuous on everybody to get it done in a certain amount of time. So I think that kind of covers the whole idea of just the general sprint overview. And then obviously at the end of this, you'd look at things like there's other words on here, probably like burn down chart and other stuff like that, where you look at how quickly you got the work done and how fast did those story points get completed. Did you guys do it well? And a lot of them they have. Where is Jared? Do you guys remember off the top of your head what are the 4 questions you ask at a sprint review?
Will there be food?
There can be. Sprint retrospective.
There was sometimes at my reviews, so
it's a good review. What went well? That's question 1. What didn't go so well? And then what did we learn? So, what did you do well? So this one you get to focus on the positives, which is actually nice. Because not often in work do you get to focus on positive things. What didn't go so well? So obviously not everything's perfect. So you got to kind of figure out what didn't work. What did you learn? So did you guys try something new? Was there some new API we had to work with this thing, or a new package we hadn't worked with? Or I've learned that providing context on up front improves how my message is received in a presentation. So other things just like your general work. And question 4, what still puzzles me? Why are we attracting fewer and fewer people to our product demonstrations and things like that? So questions that you can start to bringing them up to a group also is very nice. So having consistent meetings with people, you kind of begin to work with them and you can ask more honest questions and have more honest review as you go. So that would be the entire life cycle of the sprint. Would be you've given story points to everything to define how much work things take. Then you decide in your sprint, kind of in the sprint planning, how much work you guys want to get done and what work you're going to get done. From there, you figure out that you work through your 2 weeks, 1 week, 3 week, whatever. And then you see how much you got done. And then you look back and say, okay, how can we do better for the next one? And then you plan your next one and you get going.
How long, Brendan, are your sprints normally? Or does it vary? I don't know if it varies.
2 weeks is what we have been doing. I'm not sure if our team, because they do sprints with the entire table teams, like all of the table teams. So we get together for meetings, and it's all of the teams, which is kind of weird. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a thing, but
do you think that helps your workflow?
They are trying to eventually create one product, one software package for every single table. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this. I don't know.
Are you violating a non-disclosure agreement there? Okay, hold on, let me get a notepad out.
Never mind. Anyways,
I'm joking. I'm joking.
So, I think they're trying to keep us closer together for reasons that I didn't say.
Okay.
Interesting. Very interesting, Brendan.
Sorry if that joke was too far.
How long are your
company again?
Arthur Street, 2 weeks.
Okay. Brendan, what company do you work for?
Hillrum.
They're reporting you.
Destroyed. Okay. What were I think there was only a couple things left. So obviously, I think we've kind of looked at this a lot. This is called a Kanban board. There's various reasons for it. It keeps track of things. It's nice. Everybody should use Trello. In fact, for mine, I don't think there's anything weird on it. So.
The brain?
No. My to-do list of everything I need to do. Look at how, see? And then I can look at this and say, wow, I've had an effective week. I don't know what any of this, I don't remember what any of this is. But you can kind of keep track of things. And you can have your own sprints. And I can have a review with myself. I can set up a meeting and everything. It's going to be great. And so I have, Kanban boards are nice. You should use them. Ooh.
I can see Joey having meetings with himself.
Okay. Yeah, it's more fun that way. I don't have to argue with anybody about why I'm right.
You are the management.
Okay. Did I close out the thing I wanted? I think I did. That's okay. We'll go right here. So that's that. The burn down chart. I don't know if there's actually a way to connect this to one. Sprint report. Create a new one. Okay. It basically looks at how many you have this. Let's see if I can find one. Let's just probably want to Google and just, hey, look at that. That was tough. So, so small. Hey. So here is the sum of task estimates. So here is your story points at the beginning of your iteration or sprint. And theoretically, you evenly, knock out work throughout the whole sprint.
And there's like no hockey sticking. I'm surprised.
Yeah. This doesn't happen. But
okay.
But mainly because like everything here is like 1 point or like a couple points. So depending on how big you do it.
Sorry, we just had hockey sticking like it was like there was no tomorrow at my co-op. But not necessarily in the software. I'm talking like out on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, theoretically you want it to be somewhere around here. If you're going and you're working through all your work really quickly and then you're just kind of letting it ride for the rest of your sprint, that means you're kind of not doing as much work as you could be doing.
Right.
But maybe it turns out those tasks at the beginning, you can kind of look at this. This can help you in that review. Did that giant task at the beginning that I got done, was it actually just, it turned out it was super easy. And then maybe you can rework how you're estimating things. Now you're better at estimating things. And then those other small tasks actually took a really long time. And some of your estimation was terrible, and that's what you can work on for your next sprint. Maybe it turns out when you get to the end, you still had a couple tasks left. Maybe you guys overestimated how much work you would be able to do, or certain tasks took longer. And so you just kind of work through it, and this chart kind of helps you look and can give you a little bit more guidance into how much change you should make. This is a nice one, where it shows the completed tests. This is about right, where you have, less completed tests as you're kind of getting stuff working and knocking off a couple things. And then you take into a few things. So ideally, you get that. But if we're honest, it's probably not like that. So that's kind of how you look at your whole sprint. That would guide you in your sprint review. Other things, I think that finishes covering up the whole sprint. Does anyone have any comments on that? The next thing I was going to do was the daily meetings.
That makes sense.
So,
when should said daily meetings be?
Well, let's talk about the daily meetings. I think when you read what the 3 questions are, it'll make a bit more sense as to when you should have your daily meetings. So the questions that everybody, sometimes they're called stand-ups. At least when I did them, the reason they were stand-ups were at the beginning of the meeting, everybody stood up, and until you answered the 3 questions, you had to keep standing. And then as you answered them, you could sit down. And nobody likes to just stand there, so everybody answers the question.
I see.
At least that's what
just allow me to keep standing. I hate.
Well, you're gonna have to answer the questions anyways. So the 3 questions. What have you completed since the last meeting?
Nothing.
Which was yesterday. What do you plan to complete by the next meeting?
Nothing.
Which is
Something.
Tomorrow. And what is getting in your way?
My problems.
Oh.
Everything. The world is against me.
But these 3 questions really help you make sure that you don't get just completely roadblocked.
Can the answer to the third one be I'm an idiot?
That's a valid one. But the idea is, with the first one, you're making sure everybody's doing some kind of work. And if their answer is I didn't do much, usually there's some reason that comes with the third one. Your second one gives everybody an idea of what everyone else is working on, which is good to know in case you're working on something similar. You can bounce ideas off each other. And the last one is the asking what is getting in your way really lets people tell everybody in the group in one setting what problems they have, and then they can immediately go and if somebody in the group knows how to solve that problem, they're in the perfect forum where they can just be like, oh yeah, I can help you with that right after. And that's usually what would happen is when I would have a meeting and then I'd be like, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this specific thing. Somebody else would be like, oh, yeah, I know how to do that. It takes like 5 minutes. And then it would knock something off a lot quicker. So it's a lot of everybody brings their minds into one place so that anybody that needs help can get it right there. So after listening to these 3 questions, what time of day do you think you should probably have them?
Let me think. Morning.
Whenever works for a team that's multinational.
Multinational.
Ooh.
You could do that too.
Which is probably never.
No, my team is in Germany, and so we have them at 2:00 here.
How early is that?
No, not there? 2. Sorry, not 2. It's late for them. What time is it? I think it's like 9 or 8 or 9 here.
Oh, at night. So you have meetings?
No.
Oh,
in the morning.
Oh, okay.
It's for them. It's going to be in like late afternoon.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Usually, it definitely is for the group. I found that it works pretty nicely with doing them in the morning, just because that's when you know what you're going to be doing for these two questions kind of talk about what you're going to be doing for the rest of the day, and it's hard to somebody to just say, "Oh, I know it's getting in your way, and here's how you solve that," and then everybody goes home for the day.
Yeah, then they're kind of rushing, or like, "I'll help you with that tomorrow," and then you're like, yeah, it doesn't always work out well.
So getting everybody together, usually, at least this is how I like it, is in the morning. Everybody can meet together, and then when people need help, you already know for the whole day what help people are likely going to need.
That's kind of what we did at my co-op. We would have our daily meetings with our manager. It was just, well, it was the software devs. So 2 software devs, the manager of the department, and then the co-op, which was me. And so you just kind of, you basically ask those 3 questions.
Yeah.
Doing Agile and didn't even realize it.
Yeah, it's pretty common now. Just about everyone uses it, just because it's actually pretty easy to implement, even though you think a daily meeting is tough. I mean, how long were your morning meetings,
Well,
Josh?
see, they were supposed to be a half hour under the former manager. The current manager, it could be anywhere between a half hour and an hour and a half, because we would go off the rails a little bit. But ideally, it was around 45 minutes a day.
Okay.
That was the idea.
When I did it, it was me. There was one other intern. Then there was our mentor and our manager. And the meetings would last a total of 6 minutes.
Ooh.
It was really nice.
That's nice to go fast.
We just did them at our desk.
Yeah, because the later in the co-op that it got, the more I got irritated, because I was like, I don't want to have to go. Like, I enjoy some days where it's like, yeah, you really need a nice long meeting, kind of lift your spirits if you get off the rails a little bit. But eventually it's like, I got a lot of work to do. I don't really have time to be here for an hour and a half. This is kind of annoying. I'm going to be like leaving co-op. I'm not going to be here anymore, and I got this project that's going to get done. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the time box. Jared, you had mentioned that you knew a little bit about the Pomodoro technique. Have you actually done it? I've never actually done anything like this.
I've never done it myself, but it's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting way to look at task management.
Yeah.
We should have a meeting sometime where we talk about cowboy programming.
Cowboy programming?
Excuse me, what?
Cowboy. That is almost what we did at PCC, minus the Agile meetings. Cowboy coding is software development where programmers have autonomy over the development process. This includes control of the project schedules, language, algorithm, tools, framework, and coding style. You get to do whatever you want.
This sounds like a catastrophe.
Well, do you have a product manager in there?
I think you're the product.
Are the devs
I think you're the product manager.
Oh, that's terrifying.
It's just you.
That's just an excuse to not pay money for management.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So yeah, that's one of the things about Agile. There are different roles, which we can kind of talk about. Normally, usually you have a Scrum Master that kind of helps guide through setting up the Scrum, and usually they set up meetings for more team building exercises.
Wait, what about team building exercises? I missed that.
That's sometimes when you have a Scrum Master, and the Scrum Master sets up meetings where you work together on various weird exercises to try and just work better on how your group works together and figure out what each of you do in the group and who has the personalities that lead to certain roles and who has personalities or intellect that lead to other roles.
Oh, gotcha.
I feel my body receding inward.
It's weird at the beginning, and you kind of just you kind of just get used to it, and then you're like, okay, yeah, okay, we're just gonna do this weird thing. Usually they try and make them more entertaining though, so we had things where it was like when you like start a group, you make like a big word kind of tree where it's like everybody writes down, like everybody gets different color marker, and then you write on the board like what your hobbies are, what your interests are, do you have family, and you write that on the board, and then everybody can kind of get to know each other more, stuff like that. Eventually some of the things I had seen where everybody had a little like part of a tube, and you had to try and get a ball from one side to the other, or you just hand the ball to one person and say you have to get as many people to touch this as possible. You have to get everybody to touch the ball as quickly as possible, and you see how quickly the teams can do it. And you have to work together to figure out better ways to do it.
The CDC doesn't approve of this game right now.
That's true.
No team building. Bad.
Well, pass the ball digitally. I don't know.
What if I just come within 5 feet distance?
No, that's too close.
Too close, 6 foot.
2 meters. 2 meters distance determines our existence. Yeah, I saw that somewhere. I saw that on there's the one doctor that I keep posting. I think I dropped his videos. He makes one every day. But he said that, and I was like, oh, it's if it rhymes, it's funny and it makes sense. But okay. Other things on here that we've kind of done a little bit. Pair programming. A little different than mob programming. Where you only have 2 programmers and they work together, think out loud. You got the driver, and that's a lot of fun. We can do some of that if you want. A lot of this is you figure out what you think will work for us as a group, and then from there we can kind of go through it. So I think it's perfect time to move over to our sample project.
Speaking of which, I'm not sure where to push it. Should I push it onto GitHub? Am I overthinking it?
You're overthinking it.
You're overthinking it.
Okay, because does it have to move somewhere?
Go with the simplest solution. So what's the simplest solution, John?
Simplest solution is start a Razor web project and then start a side project within the solution that happens to facilitate all the get and post requests that we need to interact with the COVID-19 API. And I got that done. What I'm struggling with a little right now is the actual putting data table onto page.
Oh, okay. That was
so what should I call the repository?
You totally went in a completely different direction than what I think I said.
Okay. So what did you want me to do then?
So the simplest thing is to just make a repository, call it whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. And we'll just use that as base code, and then we'll probably start a new project and just copy and paste your code in as necessary.
Okay, then I'll just.
That's simple.
Because the coronavirus test website is basically just like, it's placeholder code essentially.
That's perfect. Okay. So, we should figure out how many points to denote all the... First off, we should see what things are in our backlog right now, because a lot of your estimation is relative to each other. And so it would make sense to see what all is in here. So we have things we wanted. So social media trends. As a user, I want to tell what trends, hashtag, keywords, topics, etc. are happening in relation to the pandemic, so that I can see what topics I can further look into.
I'm sorry.
You're good. Next one was geographic spread. As a user, I want to see where the pandemic has spread and how many people are affected, so that I can tell where my country compares to the world. Feel free to chime in if you want to change wording or add something or remove something, or you think it's just stupid and my ideas are trash and I should just end this and leave.
Wow, harsh. We would.
For some of the, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, if we wanted you to leave, we would have made you leave over your baldness already.
Sure.
Keep going.
Yeah, Jack.
Oh yeah. For some of these stories, like when we dive into some like the more tactical details of like how are we going to do this?
Yeah, I think what we can do is it might make sense to have in the sprint we can link cards that are like the actual tasks underlying it. That might probably be easier for defining how much work something will be.
Yeah.
So we can link the tasks that we need to do to the user stories, and then just kind of move them all as one group.
Okay.
That'll probably be the easiest way to keep the point of what work is being done with the actual work that needs to get done. There, we can just make them comments within this or add a checklist, which actually might be easier. So
cool.
We can figure that out as we go. The spread within a location. As a user, I want to see the trend of how many people have been affected within my planet, country, state, so that I can observe how quickly we are increasing in cases / deaths. So that was spread and location. Prediction trend. As a user, I want to see the current trends of the pandemic, or see what the current trends of the pandemic would mean for my planet, country, state, so that I can see what the future might look like based on past data. And obviously, this is then dependent on already having done the previous card. So that's where you kind of make sure you connect things within it. And that's why a lot of these tools have those.
Would that make it a different priority? Do you change the priority based on that?
Yeah. So yeah. Here, let me go through the last two, and then we can go through and assign priority, and that might give us a nice beginning. And then we can go back and maybe look at what specific tasks we can do, and then once we define what the tasks within the topic is, we can then define the story points. I feel like that would probably make sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It'll work. Okay. So that was the prediction trend. We have easily access. As a user, I want to easily access this as a website through a browser on any device so that it can easily be shared and viewed by all. This one kind of just I made a little comment so that to note this basically we need to set up a remote website. That was the point I was trying to get. I was trying to think of how to word it, and I think this one succinctly words it.
Got it.
And then the flight data was another thing we had talked about. As a user, I want to see current flight information with geographic data so that I can tell how much spread might still occur due to long distance travel. So, and then this one's based on the idea that you've already made the geographic spread. Lots. Is there any other things that we should add?
I think that makes sense. Maybe the Easter egg, yeah. That's what you read my mind.
I saw it and I was like, this is absolutely necessary, and if it says it's absolutely necessary, I'm gonna grab it. Okay. So why don't we go through and define the priority for all these now that we've been through all of them? So we have the social media trends, geographic spread, spread within location, prediction trend. Okay. But which ones do you guys think are probably so the priority rating goes, there is low, medium, high, and highest. And then the sprint goals are probably within the sprint. So
I I was looking at the stream and it's all blurry. I'm gonna look at the. I'm gonna actually look at the Trello board now.
Oh, yeah. I don't. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys want to jump on, I dropped the link in the ACM channel. Oh, nice. Thank you, John, for making the code on a GitHub repo. That's nice.
Well, so things that have a higher priority, social media trends is going to be one of the first things we have to do, right? Geographic spread.
Yeah. So I would think that the geographic spread one is probably a high priority.
Right.
I don't know if it's highest priority. I feel like it's just a high priority.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything right now that's a highest priority. Everything's just kind of,
I
there's a
would
lot
say
of
the
things.
Easter egg is the highest priority. I'm kidding.
Okay, that's better.
There we go.
Well, it is kind of like around the time.
She makes a point. I feel like the social media trends was another thing we kind of really was kind of like a big piece,
right?
Because I think a lot of things already show geographic spread, and a lot of them already show predictions and that kind of data.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of them really combine it with the social side,
right?
So I think that might make it a high priority thing as well.
Yep, makes sense. Spread within a location, is that dependent on geographic spread?
Spread within a location.
Sorry, where's the Trello board?
I dropped a link in the ACM channel, and I think if you've scrolled up a bunch in the Hackathon channel, you could probably find it.
There we are. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. The spread within a location is a separate graph of more of this is the trends within a specific spot. So it's not necessarily dependent on the geographic spread.
Okay.
I mean, there's probably a lot of similar stuff in the background, but
okay.
So it's more like an arbitrary spot.
Yeah, so the user could, like, I don't know, we could just show, the US, or we could just show Ohio, or we could just show the world as a single thing. But
so that means this requires statistics.
It can, or it can just be a raw data visualization. Like my image in my head to kind of go along with it would be graph of cases in Italy, coronavirus. Is this graph? Oh, no, I don't want somebody grabbing toilet paper. Something like this, or no, that's growth. This, yeah, this is curve. This is the kind of curve like this. So you have the geographic one where it shows the map, and then it has like the bubbles or whatever, and you can put the flight information over it. This is I want to look at my country. I don't know, Iran, because I live in Iran, and I want to compare it to China's curve and see where I stand.
Okay, that makes sense.
And
should we be able to change like the takeoff date, and so that you can directly compare it, right?
Yeah, you could add that if you want to add that as a comment. You can, or actually that could probably even be just another card if you wanted, and then it's built off of the spread within a location.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, and you could write up a user story, and it'll be great, and we'll all read it. And
how do I make it based off of a previous card?
I feel like I tried to make a template and it didn't really work. But just add another card.
Okay.
Give it a title.
Oh, let me think.
I don't know. Choose country/state for graph, or for yeah, graph, I guess. And then it should pop up for everybody. I might have to refresh my page.
And compare case growth based on something like that. Probably doesn't make sense, but all right. Let me see.
And then this, we can attach the other Trello card, which is spread within a location. And then you can write up the, if you want to in the description, do the, as a user, I want whatever. You can just copy and paste the title. So that, and then the reasoning as to why.
Okay. I want to be able to.
You can just copy and paste, probably. Yeah, that's a good idea. So the spread within a location. What priority do you think we should make that? I feel like those, like the first three things, kind of all are the main three things. So it would make sense to probably have it as a high priority.
Say that again.
The question?
Spread within a location.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should probably be a high priority as well.
Yeah, I like
kind
that.
What do you mean by the spread? Let me clarify that.
Number of cases within a location.
That's good.
Spread of infection.
I actually have some data on that. So one of the endpoints they use involves every individual case, whether it's been confirmed, whether it's resulted in a death or in a recovery.
Yes. So John,
which includes latitude and longitude.
We're planning priority of the user stories right now. So we don't want to get too in depth. That's how you can kind of go down wormholes and then you end up not getting anywhere because you're working on one thing and you get totally sidetracked to another. So now, no, you're good. Like that's good information to know. If you wanted to, you could.
It's just timing.
Yeah, you could also, if you wanted to keep your idea somewhere, because I know a lot of times I need to like write something down or say it immediately when I get it. That's what the little comments you can put on the card specifically as well. So if you have things you needed to write down, you can put them there and it'll keep it with the card. The prediction trend is based off of already having the spread within a location card.
Okay.
So
I finally finished typing.
Nice. As user, I want to be able to compare graphs so that I can see if one country's method of dealing with is more effective than the other. Perfect. Awesome. The prediction trend. Being able to predict within a current one. I feel like the predicting is probably a medium priority because it's less than the main graphs and main ideas that we were trying to get to.
Right.
But it would be a very good thing to have.
Right. Same thing with the flight data. That's probably a little bit lower of a priority, but it would be cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like just an interesting thing, but maybe it's not one of the key things we should really focus on.
Right. And is the easy access, that's a more high priority, right? Because that's like our front end, right? Or is it kind of a medium?
The idea was being maybe I couldn't figure out a good way to word the idea of just having this set up somewhere remotely.
Right, like on Azure.
So that, yeah, or wherever we decide to put it.
Right.
I don't know how high priority that is. because I mean, obviously, we could all just run it locally on our machines and have a working project.
Right.
So
probably more medium. I don't know.
Yeah. Jared, do you have any thoughts on where this stands?
Yeah, I'd say medium's probably pretty good. Not to put it.
Same with you, Danae. Do you have you want to go with medium as well?
I'm sorry, what was the question? Excuse me.
The priority of easily accessing the basically making this like put it on a remote server. I feel like it's a medium priority. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, or you just think that's fine.
Honestly, I have no stuff like that. So, to be honest, you could do it. So,
for the time being, let's just write pieces of code and then figure out a way to test them.
No.
Huh? Okay.
You make features of working software. So superfluous code in a sprint is not worth anything anymore. It's worthwhile to have written it prior to the sprint. But when we start and pick out what work needs to get done, writing code that we don't need to get working software is basically like adding more complexity to the project. And that's kind of going back to the things about Agile. We want less complexity and we want more working software more quickly. So sometimes writing all that code is helpful in your specific sprint, but sometimes it might just be adding a bunch of work, which will hurt the amount of work you should be getting done from your sprint.
Then allow me to ask you the question, what do we want this project to go into?
Like, where do we want to put it?
Like, are we putting it on a website or an Android app or?
I feel like that goes to whoever takes on the probably first things of where do we want to put this. Whoever works on the making it easily accessible. And depending on what platform we use, which I think we kind of went with, we at least all were interested in doing an ASP.NET web app, and it seems like it should work.
Will Razor Pages be fine?
I think so. I haven't worked with them, but I'd figure
For
it
the
out.
time being, we can stick with an ASP.NET web app just because it's simpler.
How different are the? I've heard of Razor Pages. I've just never used them.
Razor Pages allow you to directly insert C# code into an HTML page.
Ooh.
So it essentially generates the web page based on a page's code.
I like that.
It sounds like a mess, honestly. It's kind of like MVC, but with fewer steps and easier to adopt. But explaining it in words is a little difficult.
I'm pretty open to whatever works.
The problem is I'm not too incredibly experienced with it, as it's one of the things that I just kind of started and never finished before the company went under.
Okay. Josh or Jared, have you guys worked with Razor Pages before?
I have not.
I have not. I think I may have taken a little like tutorial thing with ASP.NET and did Razor Page thing.
For ease of use, then let's stick to ASP.NET web pages if that's what more people have experience with.
Okay.
Because those are still extremely accessible to people who just know like a lot of web dev.
Yes. Okay. Cool.
Sorry if that sounded reductive or condescending.
No, it's perfect. Choose state to compare graphs. I feel like the choosing a state / or country / state for graph and compare case growth based on a start date. In terms of priority, I feel like it's low. I feel like it's a cool thing that would be nice to add later.
Right.
But in terms of priority, I don't think it's terribly necessary to get done right now.
Yep.
Also, it's blocked by other things. So
Yep. Makes sense.
Okay. And next, so we did all the priorities. It's entertaining how it's highest to lowest just by how we listed them.
Yep.
From there we can kind of break down. I think within each card, I think it might be easy to just make a checklist of within it.
Things that we'll have to do in order to get this off the ground, to get that part to work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So for the social media trends, what are the things we have to do to get it done?
Well, we need a web scraper, right?
Yep.
And then somehow we have to, I don't know, categorize that data. I don't know how you would do that.
Categorize
figure
data.
That out.
So what are we planning to get with the web scraper?
We want to display social media trends to see what people are currently talking about in relation to the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's one part. There's kind of there's a lot of different web scraping, and it's more helpful to think about what the feature is that you're including than the nuance of the code that you're going to write.
I have a thought.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I get very clear what definitive web scraping is.
It's when you write code that basically goes to a website and it does requests, and basically sometimes it's going to a website and then taking the information off the website with a program instead of somebody going to that website and grabbing the data with their eyes. You grab it with code.
Okay, so basically it's more like a program getting it for you. Is that pretty much the idea?
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, and like how do you know that getting is the data that
sorry, you cut out a little bit. Was the question, how do you know what data you're getting?
Exactly. What information you're getting, like how do you know helpful?
So you have to make sure you choose the right source is kind of the main one. You basically pick a specific web page that you know the format and that's not going to change. Or you have a lot of advanced logic that can handle all the different formats of the page. And then from that you grab, usually you're only grabbing, like in this case, maybe if we're web scraping, we're looking at the number of times people use a specific hashtag. So that one you'd grab all the tweet contents, or sometimes I think they even have the hashtag as a separate kind of attribute within the, the HTML is the code of the web. If you want to call it code, it's markup language. And you can take that apart within your code to grab the specific things. So we would specifically grab out the hashtags from it, and you would specifically grab out the text and stuff.
Okay.
So,
all right, what else will we need for this? Or is that it?
You have to scrape the data, categorize it. Probably.
What about quantify the?
Yeah, maybe some type of like statistic or something, or
like of how often people are talking about this.
Yeah. I'll just put quantify the data because there's probably a little bit of there's probably a bit of processing between web scraping, categorizing, and displaying it that I can't put my finger on how it would necessarily work. It might just be statistics. It might be something else. Okay, so social media trends, we web scrape, categorize, display data, or display display data, and quantify the data. You'd probably do that first. I can't move it. Okay, that's the social media trend. The geographic spread. What do we need to do for the geographic spread? Checklist.
So what is our, let's see, I want to be able to tell where my country compares to the world.
Yeah. Well, you probably need to get current worldwide data.
What do you mean, like specifically with social media trends, or like actual data?
Okay, so we moved from the social media trends to the geographic spread card. So we're not talking about. I want to see how the pandemic has spread and how many people are affected, so that I can tell where my country compares to the world, and what things do we need to do to be able to accomplish that task.
So are we gonna have to get that data from, let's say, I don't know, CDC databases that might have?
Yeah, there's a COVID API.
That's what
And I've already facilitated that.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Got it.
And I can add support for any other endpoints as requested.
Got it.
Okay.
Though I think I've made it easy enough for other people to write it if necessary.
Perfect. So we have to get the data.
Basically, if you know what a get or post request is, you're already 90% of the way there.
Yeah, it's actually really easy to use their API.
Well, again, you're gonna have to have a way to display the data.
Yep.
At this point, I've just basically been doing a bunch of the back stuff.
Okay. Perfect. So we got the data and we display the data.
Pretty much. I don't know if this would be too technical going into, but would there be? Do you know if there'd be like any sort of intermediate step to like mapping the data before we push it up to like our front end to display?
Some sort of like pre-processing type.
Yeah, just so like when we push it up to the front end, we get exactly the data you want. So there's no like processing to be done.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like it's just putting it on the graph, putting that data onto a graph.
Okay. That's a good point.
In fact, there's also an endpoint that allows me to get a list of, on a per country basis, every single individual case, even the latitude and longitude of said case.
Yeah, it's nice.
Whoa. Okay.
Or you can just get it all in one 10 megabyte JSON.
Yeah.
Or rather, I'm not sure if it's like the individual latitude, longitude of the case, or just like the country itself.
Yeah.
So that might be useless data.
It might just be the hospital location, because that's probably how they'd be tracking it.
You could
the weird thing is, like,
even compare the amount of cases on a hospital by hospital basis.
Yes, you could.
That's kind of cool. All right.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Okay. I think those, to get the data, process it, and then take that, and then all you have to do is display it once you process it.
Makes sense.
Okay. I feel like displaying it's going to be a pain, but take some work. Okay. Spread within a location. As a user, I want to see the trend of how many people have been infected in my country, planet, whatever, so that I can observe how quickly we are increasing in case. I feel like this is a very similar set of things.
Right. It's just getting the data, processing the data, outputting the data.
I could probably phone a family member for this one. I'm not sure how much experience nurses have with epidemiology, but any help is helpful.
I think you might be thinking about the prediction idea.
I actually am. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We kind of move through the spread within a location quickly, anyways, because I can't think of anything that jumps off the top of my head as an additional step outside of the spread, outside of get the data, process, and display it.
It's supposed to sigmoid from 0 to the actual population.
John, that wasn't what I just said. I said, what things do we need to do for the spread within a location? Just the basic part, not the...
Crap, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, I just realized. Wait, no, that's exactly what you said, and that had nothing to do with what I was saying, and that's kind of like the thing I'm trying to get at. Is that I'm the one making the mistake.
So how would you do prediction?
Yes.
Math.
That has to do with the math.
Not always reliable to.
So there's a lot of ways. The one of the big things though is that you're kind of doing a lot of guesswork to do any of it, because unfortunately I haven't been allowed to implant chips to keep track of how everybody travels everywhere and how many interactions they have with. They won't let me do that yet. Even though I have the funding, they just won't let me. So there's a lot of guesswork. You can do a couple things. If you want to be simplistic, which actually still works pretty well, you could have just basic exponential trends and compare that as well with logistical trends. Which, if you had seen 3 Blue 1 Brown's video, it would make a lot more sense.
I will have to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. Sometimes even like past epidemics can actually. Well, I don't know whether or not epidemics, pandemic. Okay, so whenever you have an epidemic, you can use like past trends just to see like how like it can give you a better idea of what you expect at least.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that. Additionally, within that, there's kind of 2 kind of big ideas for how you can model your spread. You can model it where you have what are called agents within your environment, and so you model the individual as a probability of where they're going to do things. So it's a stochastic model where everything's on probabilities. Or you can model it as probabilities of the entirety of the group. So instead of looking at individual actions, you just kind of look at general population. There's just a chance that a certain number of people are going to get it, and you do the probability of it without doing a random chance spread. It's more 50% of the people get it, and then what happens, and then you do like differential equations with that. Those 2 are complicated, and I'm not writing them in C#. That's for sure.
I actually read into it, kind of reading one of the documents. Sorry, I cut off for a minute. I remember reading into one of the documents, seeing like how it's not like how I see it, but how complicated it is, because it takes in so many parameters.
Yeah, a lot of those equations have a ridiculous number of parameters. I don't know if you guys, did I drop the image of the one equation?
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah.
With like those weird.
I've seen it. That was beautiful.
This thing is terrifying. Here, I'm gonna drop it again in the ACM. That's what. This thing is terrifying. I was looking at one of the papers, Look at, there's a pi, and then there's a variable with a superscript that has 2 subscripts. What even? And it's even like the chi thing, or the z, or however you pronounce it. So it just looks stupid. Like it's literally a squiggle. It's literally a squiggle.
The world's complicated, Joey.
It's really easy to scare people with
Not
this.
in the world of Agile. It's not complicated.
Yeah, simplicity. So this does not look like.
As long as you have software, yeah.
See, I don't think I'd ever be able to get this working. See, so realistically, what you could do is, you can look at a basic exponential curve on the last 5 days, or you could do the last 10 days and kind of compare. The hope is that you're going below the exponential growth, because if you stay at exponential growth, it's terrifying, though you never do. You'd more stay at a logistical curve, which is where it starts flat, it increases, and then it flattens out again, where theoretically nobody's infected, and by the end everybody's infected.
Yes, the big moid.
The big moid. Yeah. So I feel like those would be the two equations that you'd want to overlap on top of your spread within a location data. So going back to the prediction trend and what things you need to do for it as a checklist. I feel like figuring out what equation to graph, because there's a bunch of different ones. I don't know, just researching which are the ones that people are using.
Right.
What equation, and then the processing to generate the best fit of that equation. I would think.
Makes sense.
If the shoe fits.
Hopefully when you do the math, it will. So yeah.
The sigmoid, or determining the equation, isn't necessarily going to be the hard part, but more so actually providing the parameters.
Well, the figuring out the equation is just, should we plot an exponential? Should we plot the sigmoid? Should we plot some hyperbolic tangent on top of it? I don't know. But and then the generating the best fit of that curve is probably going to be definitely the hard part. Okay, that was the prediction trend. The easily access. What do we need to, as a user, I want to easily access this as a website, so that it can easily be viewed by all. So what things do we need to do to get that done?
Hey, Joey?
Yeah.
Like, concerning the curve, I'm trying to reiterate what you said. So is it population gets infected, or
it could be either the amount of you could do it on top of the specific graph where it's like where it looks at Italy and it looks at that trend. You could do it on top of that, and I think that's what that card was referring to, where you do it over a specific region's curve and then try and flatten.
Yeah. I have a thought. Like, what about parameters? Like, remember how, like we mentioned, it started out like X, right? So, like, say it starts to quote unquote stick. I mean, could that also be due to the fact like we're being made, or I don't know? Because you can take in other parameters with that, like in terms of spawn.
So like have
Danae, your mic is clipping out.
Yeah. I think I got the main point though of it's mainly about users being able to adjust the prediction a little bit themselves. Or were you going for something else?
Sorry, I kind of lost it. What'd you say, Joey?
So I was asking, is your idea like you want to have the user have some ability to adjust the prediction model?
Well, should it also take into like like factors like including concerning the response nation to this pandemic?
Oh, I see what you mean. So like including things like social distancing and how that plays into the model as well.
Yes.
I think that would be, I feel like that might be an entire separate kind of, I feel like that's a thing that would be really cool to add. I feel like I mentioned that somewhere, maybe a little bit. But we could, should we make it another card, or should we add it as a to-do on the prediction card?
It's kind of similar to the the idea I had before on the bottom, where the goal was to figure out if a country or a state has have a more effective way of dealing with the virus than another one has. Mine has to do with
Okay.
graphing, but her idea would be
Wait.
working prediction into that. Is that? I'm not.
Well, isn't the way you're graphing it going to be a prediction? Wait. Oh, no, you're adjusting the graph. Okay, and this would be adjusting the prediction.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'll make a new card for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. New card.
I mean, I didn't really mean, it could be something that I could,
I think a new card's
okay.
a good
Yeah. Include what laws, social changes in prediction. Say user. Which
Mary, Mother of God, pray for.
Okay. As a user, I want to see what changes in social behaviors does to predictions of the curve, so that I can see how my behavior affects the overall outcome.
Makes sense.
What priority should that be?
Probably say it was, it's another feature probably, so probably lower.
I'm sorry, my headphones cut out for a moment. Could you please repeat that?
Yes. The include social changes as prediction. As a user, I want to see what changes in social behaviors does to predictions of the curve for, let's say, a given country, so that I can see how my behaviors affect the overall outcome.
So, for instance, relative frequency of messages to actually stay inside.
That, or like government enforcing no travel to Europe. Things like that as well.
Makes sense.
And priority.
I believe the US is on the top of the curve, but I don't remember the exact numbers.
It depends how you plot the curve.
Fair enough.
That's one of the things that's fun and terrible about working with data, is you can make it say whatever you want if you really try.
But the problem is,
our prayers,
it's only working off of the instructions you give it.
To meet our Father.
Okay, back to the easily access. We'll try it. Maybe we can hurry this up a little bit because I know it's getting a little later. The posting it, having it easily accessed on any device. What stuff are we going to need to do to make that possible?
Apache Cordova has the ability to export to, if you're using a Mac, iOS devices, but otherwise it's able to export to Android, Windows, and web browser devices.
Let's go simpler and just make it web browsers.
Oh, okay.
Because everything can access a web browser.
So we just need a web page, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that goes back into the ASP.NET core thing. I don't remember what features they do and do not support. I think it should be fine for our purposes, and reworking it wouldn't be terrible, but it might set things back if we have to change later on.
I think the idea was more of just how can we host this?
Oh, I believe that there are student licenses for Azure that we can use. Azure can flat out just host testing websites. And I believe that there's a free plan as long as the number of data accesses is minimal.
Perfect. One and done. It probably is going to. We have to do one more pass through, and hopefully it should be pretty easy to determine how much work each of these things is.
I should note, though, we don't necessarily have to pass to hosting every single time we want to test. If we're running a website through ASP.NET stuff that's configured in Visual Studio, you can just flat out test your code in a web browser without having to host it.
Okay.
Perfect.
So are we using ASP.NET as both like our for the front end and back end, or are we using like a front end JavaScript framework on top?
We might. The thing is, there's always an option. Oh, sorry, Joey was speaking. My bad.
Well, I think the only big thing we need to add on the front end is some sort of JavaScript libraries. I don't know if we need a whole framework to do all the, because I feel like the only thing we need to really do on the front end is the displaying the data.
Fun Awesome has served my company well in making it look pretty.
Yeah.
Really, just open source JavaScript libraries also work. CSS libraries.
I think Joey also mentioned D3 was a good library for displaying graphs.
Yeah.
And that can be used to process the data.
Well, no, D3 displays the data.
Then, okay, now we have a step in between that we need to get to.
Yeah, that's the point of why we always had you get the data, you pre-process the data, and then you display the data.
Okay. I can take each of the cases and then turn them into sets of coordinates, and then we could probably count those in an F# program if C# can just run F# code on a data set.
Probably writing in an F# is overkill and makes it more complex.
That's right.
Simplicity. Okay. Getting the flight data. As a user, I want to see the flight information so I can tell how it spreads due to long distance travel. What are the things we need to do? Scrape the data. Probably process the data. So that's probably minimal. And then display the data.
This is very reminiscent of Thomas's. You just get input, process, output.
Yeah, it's easy.
Easy A.
Easter egg. The to-do list for that is do a thing.
Yep, easy enough.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, Fibonacci stuff.
There's still 2 more cards, buddy. We're so close.
Still 2 more.
Choose country, state, graph and compare the growth. I want to be able to compare graphs so that I can see if one country's method of dealing with it is better or more effective. What do we need to do for that?
It'd be nice if you could somehow get information related to how a country is dealing with the epidemic. Say if ours is different from Sweden's, and then you would also need to get the data, just the raw like cases numbers, and you need to be able to plot that, and you'll just put you can see where the function takes off, and then in the one, so when the cases start ramping up, and then you can compare that to where the cases start ramping up in the other country, regardless of what particular day they started on.
Yeah, you want to line it up with a line by like what, first case or
essentially, yeah. So yeah. And yeah, you just need to plot that data.
Okay. And okay. And the last one is include social changes in the prediction model. The to-do list for that is probably determine how social changes affect the model, just as a prediction as a whole.
Yep.
And then calculate a new model, and then display the new model. Because you have to research how it would change it, then use that new calculation within the code, then have the code to display.
Right. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, story points. Now that we've defined how much work things are. 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, or 21 points.
For the social media trends, well, you got to develop a web scraper, and then you got to figure out how to categorize it. Then you got to figure out how to display the data. So that's all probably going to be, that's a lot. Probably, are we saying 21's our max?
So my thinking is, if I'm kind of looking at this as a whole, I see like we have a lot of the get the data, process, and display the data.
Yes.
I feel like having the fact that we have to categorize it makes this kind of one step higher than all those other ones.
Yeah.
And so my initial thinking was to make those other ones maybe more 8 points. And the social media trend, like the 13 that's above it. Because I feel like there's some other low-hanging fruit that then can fit under there still.
Okay.
Okay. And how high of a priority is actually getting the graph out?
That's, are you on the board?
Yeah, I am on the board.
So all of the cards have a priority listed on them. So
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought there was an actual number listed with them. I'm dumb.
No. I mean, there's only 3 values, so I mean, you could do it that way. So, Jared, I don't know if the idea of like 13 for the social media trends and then 8 for the ones that are kind of like the...
Yeah, that's sounds good.
13. Geographic spread is one of the 8.1s. The spread within a location is an 8-pointer. The flight data. Do you think that this is the flight data one? We're displaying that as well. Is that, do you feel like that's still an, I don't know if it's a whole 13 points. But I feel like processing it and displaying it is going to be more annoying than...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like spread within a location and geographic spread are a bit easier. So it's probably a step up.
Okay.
Easy access. Does that seem like it's more of an easy thing?
I have no idea.
No.
How hard it is to post something on Azure and have...
Won't know until you try it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's probably, I'd say it's like maybe like a step down from the other tasks because it's not really like a programming task. It's just
an IT-related networking task.
Yeah, you probably just look up a guide on just how to post it up to Azure.
It probably is.
Okay.
It's either, it's probably a 3 or a 5.
Okay.
I think the unknown, I'm more leaning towards just giving it a 5 so that I'd rather overestimate, honestly.
Okay. That makes sense.
The prediction trend, you have to figure out what equation and then process the best fit line.
That one I don't know. That one's probably 13. I don't know. 8, 13.
Who wants to do string algebra in C#?
Also, you have to display the line on top of that.
Right.
So the other thing is, this is kind of based on the fact that you've already done the spread within a location. So, the other thing is, this is kind of based on the fact that you've already done the spread within a location. So, the other thing is, this is kind of based on the fact that you've already done the spread within a location. So, the other thing is, this is kind of based on the fact that you've already done the spread within a location. So, the other thing is, this is kind of based on the fact that you've already done the spread within a location. So, the other thing is, this is kind of based on the fact that you've already done the spread within a location. So, the other thing is, this is kind of based on the fact that you've already done the spread within a location. So, the other thing is, this is kind of based on the fact that you've already done the spread within a location. So, the other thing is, this is kind of based on the fact that you've already done the spread within a location. So, the other thing is, this is kind of based on the fact that you've already done the spread within a location. So, the
Right.
I feel like it's not. I don't know. I guess scraping data is pretty easy, and processing it and then displaying it. And since we've already at this point you'd already have display, there shouldn't be much of a challenge there, although it's displaying something different. I feel like this might be an 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's probably a lot into it, even though it looks kind of simplistic in the to-do list.
No objections.
Yeah.
Neither on my part. Should I post the link to the repo on the Trello board?
No. Because normally if I do that, I'd have one of the attachments for Trello is the GitHub attachment, and you can link issues to cards on here. It's really nice.
That's actually fantastic. Why have I not realized this is a thing?
You should really use Trello more. Yes, the Easter egg is a... Well, hold on. The Easter egg is definitely not going to be a 1 on how much work it's going to take.
Okay, what I'm thinking 3 or 5.
You want an Easter egg in the project?
Yes.
Well, how simple of an Easter egg?
Well,
like, do you just want to make something really simple and just hide it in there?
I don't know. I haven't really thought about it that much. I was like, well, we could have like some sort of a. Do you remember War Games, that movie, where they had like
Yes.
I do.
thermonuclear war? But like I'm thinking that something like that, but related to the spread of disease, like some sort of like you can watch
So,
airplanes
like
fly from country to country, and then everybody gets infected.
That's a lot of work.
Yes, that is a lot of work.
21.
That's a 21.
That's
buddy.
animations in 3 weeks. When I don't think any of us have. Do any of us have experience with animation in web dev?
I've experienced with animation in Java FX.
I mean, then you're probably going to be pretty decent with. I think jQuery's pretty decent about handling animations.
It was just an idea I spouted off the top of my head. I don't think we should put that much effort into it. No.
21.
Oh my gosh.
It's a 21, buddy. Do you want to make it 1? You can go back and make it 1, and I won't change it.
We'll see what happens.
Choose country/state for graph to compare growth on. This is you have to get the information for how countries deal with it, and then you have to line up countries on a first case basis.
Right.
So lining them up on first case basis is probably pretty easy.
Yes.
You just throw out the one thing.
Yeah.
The getting the informations for how countries deal with it.
Yes.
I feel like it's hard.
Yeah.
I
don't know how.
That, or you could just manually input it yourself.
You could also do that.
Just kind of a big name thing. So.
8. Do you think?
I could probably go with 8. I feel like there's enough. Maybe even a 5, because I feel like it's really easy to because it's based on the idea you've already done one thing before. Lining up countries by first case has to be stupid easy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
we already have about 10
makes
for it.
sense. 5's good.
And the last one includes social changes in prediction. Based on the idea you've already created a prediction model and you're displaying it, you determine how social effects change the model, calculate the new model, and display the new model. I personally think that this one is pretty difficult, just because there's a decent amount of research to go into it, and then there's probably a good amount of math to do within the code.
Yeah, makes sense.
I feel like maybe a 13.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Sure.
Okay.
21.
21? Okay.
Oh no.
I don't know what that's from.
What's 9 plus 10?
19.
21.
You're stupid.
Wow.
My sister does it all the time, so I get it.
All right.
Classic comedy.
Is class dismissed?
Okay.
It looks like we're...
No, we have one last thing.
What's that?
We have to decide what we want to put in our sprint.
Oh. And then we get to choose like what we want to do.
Yes.
Okay.
How many points should we get done in our sprint?
3. 24?
Yeah. I think we could do 30.
All right, we'll throw the Easter egg in there. Yeah, it's 30. We all are just working on the Easter egg.
I don't. Well, if we do.
What's a product worth?
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I guess I don't know. Maybe it's how much work. How many? What? I guess we could probably just look at what things we need to get done because it's hard for us to pick the first sprint. You know how much work we think we can get done.
Yes.
So what things is it both reasonable to get done in a week, keeping in mind we all have stuff to do?
Like Dr. Summers projects. Oh,
Yeah.
fun stuff.
I don't have much stuff to do, honestly.
John, you should do the whole project.
John does the whole project.
Serious or not?
You can do as much. We're not going to stop you. That's for sure. Well, we might stop you.
Okay.
What I feel like the social media trends, and I would like to do if you can change what location you're looking at, the social media trends, and then looking at the spread within a location. Unless you could probably also throw in like one or two other things, maybe one other.
Yeah.
I believe location by location basis also includes data on like which province is it in,
Perfect.
or even possibly which state.
What is there one more item we'd want to blow off the backlog to put into our sprint?
The Easter egg. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I'm kidding.
It's gonna be a high story point sprint, buddy.
That's the goal. We got to get a lot done. I don't know. The geographic spread is kind of cool. Is there anything? Hold on. That's not depending on that. Spread on location has to be... So, once we get the spread based on location done, then we can work on prediction. So prediction's probably going to be a next week thing if we get to it, right? So then I would say, well, and then something that might be...
Yeah, a lot of them are kind of based off that one.
I would say either the geographic spread or the easy access. If you want something with low points, easy access would be nice to get done. It'd be nice to have a web page for us to just be able to go to look at all of our data.
Yeah, that might also just be nicer to have done earlier in the process.
Yeah, rather than worrying about it later. That is my thought.
Well, there's our sprint.
Okay.
Do we want to do daily stand-ups? Maybe every other day, since we kind of have a lot going on. I think maybe doing every day might be kind of nice. But I know like most of the days it's going to be like I worked all day yesterday.
Right.
What days of the week should it be?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Nope, I have classes those days. Definitely not. Well, it might actually work better.
Well, what time do you have class?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm in class until noon. And then after that, I've got from like, 4 to 5 with Professor Nolan? 5:15? So after that.
Jared, you're taking classes, right? No.
I'm working and doing online classes.
Oh.
Well, I mean, everyone's doing online classes at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Dad.
Originally online classes.
Oh.
What if we did? Does like a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday work?
Getting up to
Yeah.
write this on the board. I'm running out of
Does
room.
this mean that we're going to have to do a stand-up on this Saturday?
Like tomorrow, I guess. That would actually, I mean, that kind of works since like we're gonna be, some of us are gonna have time tomorrow. I feel like Saturdays are a good day to have them.
Makes sense.
But then that means we
Yeah.
only have like 5 stand-ups between now and the deadline.
Yeah, but we're not gonna have. I mean, we don't have much work to do, and we don't have much time between each stand-up to do the work.
Right.
Unless John, if you had some other thought.
Like John does all the work.
I mean, look, I was on co-op and I had no classes going on, and then co-op decided, oh, you know what? We don't have money.
Well, I think the nation decided that, but the virus decided
yeah.
that, but you are all going to have money.
Sorry, the word decide ascribes agency. That's my mistake.
But yeah, I think that'll be fine. Do you want to do it
Jared,
in the morning or the evening, though?
I would honestly prefer the evening, but that's just because I'm a lazy asshole who doesn't get up before 2 nowadays.
That, I mean, yeah, but we also like Jared. If you're working all day, that probably don't want to have to do a random meeting during the day.
Right.
So
Yeah.
well, we could do like evening. I don't know. I guess we've been doing all our stuff is evening stuff anyway.
Well, I could also say my classes with Kang don't start until 10 a.m. So I've also actually got like 8 a.m. to 10 free.
Electronics or signals?
Oh, but electronics. But
it's not bad.
But you have class. Joe.
I have class from 8 to 9:20 on Tuesday, Thursdays.
Got it. Okay.
You're nonlinear?
That's operating systems.
Oh, okay. Oh my goodness, you're already in operating systems.
I need to go.
Okay.
Thank you, Joey. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
No problem.
All right, it's good to hear from you, Danae.
You too. See ya.
See ya.
The other option, which is probably less nice, but it's probably a lot easier to do, is we have a text chat. Technically, we could just post the 3 questions and you fill in the blank for what you've been doing.
Oh yeah.
And we could just do that. We could just do that every day, and at some point during the day, try and post something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that would work.
That's probably the easiest way since there's so much going on right now.
Okay. Wow, that's actually. You're making your own like adjustments to the Agile system. I like it.
That's how you make Agile work for you.
If you just take someone else's system and do nothing with it, there are going to be shortcomings because your workflow isn't a company's workflow.
Yep.
Okay, so do we just want to use the hackathon channel then?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Drop stuff in, especially if you have like a day where you're going to be working. May drop a note in and say, "Hey, this is what I've done. This is what I'm going to do. Here's what roadblocks I have."
All right.
The roadblock is I'm stupid or I have no idea what I'm doing. Maybe.
I will probably actually end up dropping, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing with this particular thing. Does anyone else have experience with this?"
Yeah.